I remember sitting in my AP government class this past year with a 100 square table in front of me, completely blank. Next to that table were 10 markers, all in different colors. By the end of the period, I would have to decide how to divvy up the representative districts of this imaginary state. Now, since this state, which I nicknamed Andrewland, was completely fake, I could draw the districts in whatever shape I wanted to, and not have to deal with the consequences of my actions. AP Government taught me how to face the world in the most candid way possible. Unlike in Andrewland, we have to live with the consequences of gerrymandering every day. It's a practice that plagues our society and results in politics becoming less effective and less representative of us, the people. As such, let's examine a bill on the docket for the National Speech and Debate Tournament, a bill to end gerrymandering. In the next few minutes, we'll explore what gerrymandering is, the inherent problems with it, and how this bill works to solve it. In order to figure out which House representative will serve a group of people, states have to determine a fair and balanced way to divvy up those people. For most states, it's impossible and impractical to have one person represent the entire state. But drawing borders comes with problems. Who should decide the lines, and on what basis should they decide them? This is the heart of gerrymandering, a process defined by Michael Wines of the New York Times as, quote, tilting the political map steeply in the favor of one party, end quote. In a sense, it makes election races so easy for one party's candidate that they don't have to worry about facing strong opposition. To make matters worse, district maps are drawn so that not only does the party in power hold the advantage of representation, but the advantage of creating the maps themselves. This is where the bias arises. When one party takes power, they stay in power because they tweak the system just enough to make the workload easy. It's for that reason that Ballotpedia listed in the 2020 election a total of 13 battleground or swing states. The other 37 were deemed safe enough to make early predictions on one party's victory. If gerrymandering didn't exist, the truth is that every state would be a swing state. Oh, how much fun politics would be. Politicians actually doing their job because their career is on the line if they don't. Alas, that's not the case. Ineffective senators and representatives sit in their chairs doing next to no work and get reelected over and over. Take Idaho Congressman Jim Risch, who according to the Idaho State Journal has only passed 2 bills since being elected in 2008. He was elected to another term last year. Since he doesn't have to be accountable, people do work when it's only convenient, even if it counterintuitively hurts their party in the long run. Before gerrymandering became commonplace, high-ranking officials could order their more junior colleagues to vote a certain way on bills or face reductions in party funding. This would hurt their campaign efforts and possibly end with them facing ousting. Today, that's not the case. A congressperson could vote the other way or not at all and face no consequences. Ruby red and berry blue districts drawn by the parties prevent us from progressing forward as a nation where parties work together not for the success of some, but many. Gerrymandering has got to go for the health of politics, for unity, for efficiency, for us. This bill is how we make that happen. In the 10 short lines of this bill, an entire future plan is outlined for the country, one where the effects of gerrymandering are lessened, if not eliminated entirely. The first step taken by this bill to reach this outcome is the establishment of an independent redistricting commission, who would take charge of all district boundary drawings. By making this commission independent, it is by definition nonpartisan. It doesn't sway in the direction of a party. It only looks at the required facts, such as state population and where everyone lives. That's all that has to be drawn to draw an effective map. The way each district votes doesn't need to be a criteria for creation. Of course, finding a set number of people to create an independent commission might be difficult, but an alternative idea is to have an equal number of Republican and Democratic representatives sit on the board of the commission, allowing all the parties that wishes to be considered. More importantly, they'd still be kept in check by the state's election employees. People, powerful or not so much, must be considered and heard by their representatives. With the closeout of gerrymandering, it shouldn't surprise you that more people would be interested in government processes. More participation means more representation in our society. I should make it clear that this bill isn't meant to support one party over another. It's meant to bring about a change in our society that would lead to the building of bridges across the political river instead of being reduced to a slow ferry ride between the two. Outlawing gerrymandering would improve our government's efficiency and ethic, both of which they desperately need. In conclusion, after discussing what gerrymandering is, its associated problems, and path paved by this bill towards a solution, it's clear that the political plague is damaging. Yes, but it is absolutely treatable if we start today by passing this bill. Reach out to your friends, or turn your district into one that is plum purple and ready to vote on competence, service, and personal beliefs alike. In the end, the districts I drew earlier, as disgusting as they looked, would have had little effect on voting. The vote in Andrew Land belongs solely to the voters. Wouldn't it be best to bring it back here? Now, onto the con speech. I'm going to sound like an annoying, corrupt politician here, but hear me out. Yes, gerrymandering has got to go. Yes, it should be avoided at all costs, if not abolished completely. No, it should not pass for any reason. I know. Bear with me. If we want to establish fair representation among our constituents, we have to divide them somehow. Drawing lines between people may seem smart, but it comes at a point at which it becomes convoluted, confusing, and a disservice to the American people. Think about it this way. I live in a fairly middle-class town. I'm not especially rich, but I'm doing okay financially. I vote a certain way, and most of my neighbors vote similarly. Just a mile north from me, however, lies a much wealthier community with completely different political views. Shouldn't we be represented the way we want to? Absolutely. And that's why a bill to end gerrymandering taken from the 2021 National Speech and Debate Tournament's congressional debate docket must fail. In the next few minutes, we'll delve into the permeating problems of this bill from Section 1 to Section 2 to Section 3 to prove that this bill is a disservice to the American people. Let's begin at the very top of the bill, in Section 1, which states that an independent regulatory commission will oversee redistricting procedures. Now, the main problem with this plan is that there is no plan. Let me explain. The bill provides no specification as to how these commissions will be formed and at what level they'll be created. If they're created at the state level, these commissions will not only shy away from changing current district lines, but will embrace biases held within the state based on race, party affiliation, or otherwise. This doesn't solve gerrymandering at all. It simply hands the control of gerrymandering to another separate entity. Alternatively, if these commissions were established at the national level, you run into way too many constitutional blockages. Most clearly, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution prohibits the federal government from exercising powers not specifically enumerated to it. This includes the election processes, a right famously held at the state level. Since there is no specificity as to how this independent regulatory commission will be formed, it's best to send this bill back to the drawing board to develop this idea further. Passing it now will give the federal government unrestrained control over how we vote, who we vote for, and how often those district lines change. And that's just the beginning. Let's look at Section 2, where this bill outlines what these regulatory commissions will be comprised of. The bill requires that the commission shall be a body of nonpartisan members. That's the main problem. What defines nonpartisan? More importantly, in the selection process, how will the government make sure that the members that are being selected for the committee are truly nonpartisan? I could say I'm a centrist all I want, but I'll admit that I do have my leanings, both Republican and Democrat. Perhaps this commission could be a nonpartisan body with individuals holding their own political ideals, with the count of Democrats and Republicans of the commission being equal. But when the individual is the object in question and not the body itself, it's much harder to control. In order for this bill to merit passage, the wording of the bill must be carefully refined to ensure that people are not restricted in their expression of political beliefs. Finally, let's look at Section 3, where the bill states that the election officials in each state will oversee implementation. Consider this in relation to Section 1, where it's not exactly clear whether these commissions will be the responsibility of the federal or state government. While this may serve as an answer to that question, it raises further questions as to the legitimacy and universality of this implementation. As has become a hot topic in debate since the last election, each state has its own voting laws and restrictions along with it. Voting in Washington is much different than voting in Georgia. And similarly, we can expect these conditions to be subjected to different criteria, depending on the state they operate in. This means that even if we pass this bill, the remnants of gerrymandering will still exist, despite the intent we have. In order to ensure that doesn't happen, we need a new approach. The bill does nothing to solve this issue. So, with all of the problems present in this bill from sections 1 through 3, it's clear that the problems of this bill outweigh the benefits. It takes way too much control away from us, the people. Even though I started out sounding like a corrupt politician, I think you and I can both agree that I sounded pretty clean compared to the corruption exposed here. If we are to serve our people and keep our elections clean, it's best not to pass this bill until it's been revised.